children in football and wrestling.
Good evening. I'm calling the Madison School Board to order. Let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please. Mr. Stevens.
Mrs. Melissa Walker.
Here.
Mrs. Cotterman.
Here.
Mr. Mosier.
Here.
Miss Amy Walker.
Here.
Mr. Wigton.
Here. We need a motion to adopt our agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mrs. Melissa Walker.
4.
Mr. Mosier.
4.
Mrs. Cotterman.
4.
Miss Amy Walker.
4.
Mr. Wigton.
4. We need a motion to approve our previous board meeting minutes.
I'll move. I'll second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Miss Amy Walker.
4.
Mrs. Melissa Walker.
4.
Mr. Mosier.
4.
Mrs. Cotterman.
4.
Mr. Wigton.
4. We have no certificates tonight to present. That takes us to our recognition of visitors. I see no visitors that are going to address us.
Bowersock is here.
Are we going to do this now?
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Bowersock.
Hi, my name's Tim Bowersock. I live here in the district at 1360 Barber Lane, but I'm here on behalf of the city of Mansfield as the city's economic development director. An issue's come up that has to do with one of our tax abatement agreements, the agreements with Airport West 1 LLC. It's for a warehouse that was built on Airport West Road out near the airport. It's a 160,000 square foot warehouse. It has come on the tax rolls in part. It's 90% complete. The auditor's assessed value or value of the property came in at 90% was, I want to say, around 40 or 4,900,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. At 100%, it'll be in at about 5.1, 5.2. The original anticipated value was going to be $9 million, and that was based on what the anticipated investment would be in materials, construction, and so forth. I believe what happened, because this is somewhat of a unique situation, and I've had two other projects that came on about the same time where we've got this that are in city schools district, is that with COVID and supply chain issues, materials costs were astronomical to some degree. This building was originally proposed to be a steel-on-steel building, which is a little less expensive to build, but ended up being a poured concrete building, which is in stand-up wall, they call it, which makes it a more expensive building. But by square footage, I can only guess that appraisers do not put in a lot of extra value to that, the concrete versus steel. The big difference, of course, then is in the tax value. At the taxable value, there's a significant difference in what the school compensation would be if it's based on the actual value that the auditor picks it up at. And I don't know what the correct answer is or to solve this as an issue. Of course, the developers feel that they should not be penalized. They consider it a penalty, I guess, but that they should only be paying based on the value that the auditor put on the property, not based on what they estimated that value to be at the beginning of the project. It came about, I believe, because they are currently in negotiations to lease that facility, which means they'll complete it to the customers or tenants' design, but which would be the balance of what's needed done. But I don't have an answer for them at this point. I would ask the school board to take serious consideration of this. I understand that you've at least been made aware of the issue, and I've provided Brad with a copy of the agreement, which I'm sure probably already had, but to make sure that you had the signed agreement. And I'd like to get back to them as soon as I can, and I realize that answer is not going to come tonight, but I'm here to I'm available. I'll stick around, as I understand it's on your agenda for later in the evening, in case you have questions that I can answer. I handle these projects and have for the last 25 years, and as I said, this is a unique situation. Going forward, I will hopefully come out of all this with a plan that will eliminate the possibility of such a discrepancy in the future. And that's just something again, I've got to work through. Brad's been, helpful to me, and I'm sure I'm going to have considerable discussion with city schools as well on the topic, and we'll come up with a good solution. I mean, we've had a pretty good relationship with these projects, and for the past, let's say, 20 years of that, 25 anyway. And like I say, this has just come up, and we really need to get a good solution that solves everybody's, or is acceptable to everybody, I guess, is what I want. So.
Well, we may have further questions when we discuss that later in the
I'll stay, like I said.
meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Okay, moving on. Administrative committee reports. Legislative committee.
No report.
Athletic Board of Control, nothing this month.
Haven't met.
Student representative, I don't see them tonight. Okay. Facilities report.
Good evening, Mr. President. Briefly, just a couple things for you. As we do our best in the facilities department to try to conserve as much money as possible and stretch our dollars as far as we can, there are a couple major projects that are going to be coming up probably next month for your approval, and we're working hard right now to try to refine those. And those will be a pretty extensive roof projects for the summer, doing the high school over top of the choir and music room and band room, and then also about a quarter of the roof at Mifflin Elementary School, primarily over top of the gym there. The other thing is we had our 3-year inspection on our high school stadium bleachers, and there's some extensive repair work that's going to need to be done there. Right now we're gathering quotes and we're getting people involved, and we hope to have that ready for you next month. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Student achievement.
Okay. At Mifflin, students who earn their most house points won a pizza party, and the difference between first and second place in the current house prize competition is separated by only 1 point. Teachers have been working hard analyzing data from mid-year diagnostic and making adjustments to interventions in practice. Results from this second round of iReady show that all 5 grade levels have exceeded growth expectations and goals set in reading, and 4 of 5 grade levels have exceeded growth expectations and goals set in math. At Madison South, the Student Council put together a bake sale last week to help raise money for London Hamilton, who is a 3rd grade student at South that is battling cancer. In the 3 days that the bake sale was happening, they were able to raise a little over $4,400, all of which will be going to London and her family. At the middle school, there was a spelling bee. There were 11 students from the middle school who completed in the Richland County spelling bee last month. Congratulations to 8th grade student Lena Sassis, who came in 2nd place. Lena, along with 7th grade student Adriana Alexander and Amara Happen, have qualified to go on to the Tri-County Spelling Bee this month. As an update for the report this Wednesday, students and staff raised $3,174.50 for London Hamilton and her family through our 3-day grade level coin war. This was an event put together by our Builders Club, which is the middle school version of Key Club. So there was a flyer that was attached to the email that went around and was shared throughout the building on social media. And after that was shared, Paul's Drive-In in Shelby contacted us and volunteered to donate the ice cream for the winning grade level. A great achievement to support a student and family in need within our Madison school community. At the high school, scheduling for next school year has already begun. Teachers are working extremely hard to prepare students for the end of course exams. The February Professional Development Day will focus on examining HQSD and/or recent high-stakes test results, discussing Cambium restart readiness, lesson planning and co-planning, sharing critical thinking and depth of knowledge strategies and questions, and sharing instructional strategies and recent successes, and exploring new software. The high school is in the middle of celebrating Black History Month. MSI leaders read biographies of important Black leaders and innovators over the morning announcements each day. Pictures and biographies are also displayed on the televisions throughout the school day. During each advisory period during the month of February, all students will continue to watch video clips focused on the inspirational stories of famous Black Americans. And lastly, at the Madison Adult Career Center, students in both dental assisting and industrial electrical maintenance are maintaining 95% or higher attendance. 3 medical assisting technology students earned registered medical assisting certification. 1 medical assisting technology student earned registered phlebotomy technician certification. And enrollment in cosmetology programs, including cosmetology, advanced cosmetology, and nail technician, is near capacity with limited seats for March 2023 enrollment. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Anything from the Board Policy Committee?
No.
Superintendent's update.
Okay, we have passed the halfway mark of the third quarter, which is hard to believe, although with the way the weather is out there today, it's looking like spring. We have parent-teacher conferences in the district tomorrow night, as well as next Tuesday. Just a report on an update on the senior citizen luncheons. Last month, this month, we had 86 people attempt to register for the luncheon, and we could only accommodate 60, so we had to turn 26 people away, and so we put those 26 on as first in line for next month, and by the end of the day of the luncheon this month, we had a full house already for next month. So what we've done, Mr. Grove has worked with Chef Mo and have arranged for us to do it in 2 sessions so we can have twice as many people come and attend the luncheon. So at next month's luncheon, which will be the first week of March, there'll be 11 to 12 o'clock session, and then there's a half-hour break for them to reorganize, and then from 12:30 to 1:30 there'll be another session. So very well attended. The students and the staff who are involved in that just do a great job, and the senior citizens love it, and it's just really going well. And then also we've got a date set for the Elementary Olympics, which I don't think I've given you that yet. That'll be on Tuesday, May 16th at 6 o'clock. That was very well received last year, and appreciate Mr. Gordon's work on that and that whole committee. Done some things to refine that, and we think it'll even be better this year than it was last year.
What time does that start?
6 o'clock. And then I believe the rain date is that Thursday, the 18th, right? But it won't rain. Never rains in the spring in Ohio. And then lastly, just want to give you some highlights as far as education goes from Governor DeWine's budget proposal to the General Assembly. It included continued implementation of the Fair School Funding Plan, which that is good news. There is significant funding in his proposal for literacy instruction, especially with a focus on phonics, and also professional development of staff with respect to phonics instruction, and also significant dollars devoted to career tech, adult education, and early childhood education. So that budget's got a long way to go, as it works its way through the House and Senate, that bill won't need to be, isn't required to be passed until June 30th. So all of that's got a lot of amendments and a lot of things, much process to go through before it's finalized. But I think that was good news that Governor DeWine was supporting those things. And that concludes my update.
Thank you. Next, we have a presentation from Student Services Director, Mr. Turlow.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board, for allowing me to present some information about what we've been doing in student services this year. Just kind of an overview of who's within that office over there. Heather Rickards, our secretary, Nathan Whitman. One of the changes we did this year is he is our school psychologist for preschool through fourth grade and our non-publics that are in our district, because we have to provide them services as well. And then with that, we added Kristen Hutchison as a 5 through 12 school psychologist. Kind of gives us a little more better flow of with working with our students and within the buildings as well. Lisa Jackson is a school psychologist assistant. She's going through a school psychology, going to school to become a school psychologist. So she does academic testing for us within there. Jen Eckenweiler, who I work with on a regular basis, is preschool coordinator. John Agen is in our office and always a welcome addition. Does home instruction for us, does some scholarship IEP writing for our autism scholarship students, and he's kind of the student whisperer as well. Any student that has difficulty, he can work with them. He does amazing things. And then obviously myself. Within the buildings and support staff that we have, and this slide's really just to show the breadth of the services that we are offering. We have 41 intervention specialists, 33 educational aides, a nurse in each of the buildings. We have 5 speech language pathologists. We have occupational therapy, physical therapy, and assistants, audiologists that comes into the buildings, an orientation mobility specialist who works with students with visual impairment, and that ties in directly to our teacher of the visually impaired. We have a board-certified behavior analyst that comes in and supports our behavior classroom at the elementary level, and then on the other side are some other groups that come in, which is Catalyst and Family Life Counseling. Both come in for mental health, and Silver Lining Group does some work with students specifically with behaviors in the classroom. So we kind of, whatever support the student needs, we're trying to find something to match that need. Students, so as of today, because it changes every day, we are serving 449 students K through 12 with identified disabilities in our district. We have 45 students, and not included in that are 45 center-based students at the preschool, 11 itinerant students, which for those that don't know, I learned this last year, itinerant students mean that we go out and provide services to them outside of our school, or the parent comes in and brings them in for approximately about an hour per week, kind of the younger group, and getting them prepared for even almost like preparing them for preschool. Again, I mentioned that we have non-public schools in our district. By Ohio law, we do evaluations for them, and we have 94 students within those non-public schools, which is Mansfield Christian and St. Mary's are the 2 schools we work closely with. So there's a lot of extra students on top of ones that not only that we're serving within the district. And then the last number I wanted to put up there, we have 50 referrals for evaluation this year. And so those are students that we get a referral or a request from a parent for an evaluation. We have 30 days to respond to the parent to let them know whether we're moving forward with evaluation, just letting you know the process. After that, if we decide to go forward, we have 60 days to complete the evaluation team report, meet with the parent, and then we have another 30 days to write an IEP. So it is a process, and our school psychologists obviously have a large load that comes in as far as parent requests. And we have a staff that's very efficient and works through those, and both their philosophy and my philosophy is that we want to support the student needs as we find them. Going over special education profile data, which is based on the 2021-22 school year. These are how we are evaluated by the state. You can see that the ones in red are the areas that we did not meet. The early childhood transitions, Jen Eichenbauer and I worked through with the state and determined that although we did not meet this, it wasn't an error in our part, it was a data reporting error, so we just have to go through a corrective action plan, which I got to learn about last year, my first year in this position. Those are fun to do and put in for the state. The alternate assessment participation, the state sets a goal that we have only 1% of our students taking part in the alternate assessment. They give us a checklist to go through. Last year we did not meet that. This year we did not meet that, but this year we are at our lowest percentage. We had 1.27% of our student population took part in reading, and 1.34% of our student population took part in math. So it is, the year before that it was over 2%. So we are looking at how to best get down to who should be taking part in that.
Can I ask a question there, Eric?
Sure.
What percentage of our kids are probably in that developmentally delayed, multi-handicap that alternate assessment is critical for?
It would be between, and this is it's just an arbitrary number set forth by the state, which is then they're held accountable to the federal government. Off the top of my head, I would say we're somewhere between 1% to 4%.
Wow. Okay, sorry.
No.
It just blows me away what they do to us.
I question it every day. Looking at discipline discrepancy by disability and by race, that NC means that there's not a calculation because we don't meet the threshold for that calculation. So by default, we meet those. Graduation rate, we met. We exceeded, I believe it's 64% is the goal the state has, and we are at 84%. Dropout rate we met as well, which we hadn't met the previous year. And Mr. Peterson and I had talked about that and tried to figure out some reasons why. And it could have been related to, as you can see, it's previous years, so it could have been related to COVID-related experiences as well. Secondary transition we've met, which means that we are helping those students plan for life after school. That starts at age 14. Post-school outcomes are to be determined. That's looking at competitive employment or training after school, once they're done and graduated from school. The special education family survey we sent out multiple times last spring. I think Mr. Peterson got tired of me having to send that out over and over again, but that's what the state would like us to do. Ohio State collects the data. And then timely initial evaluations we didn't meet. We didn't meet by 2 the previous year. We didn't meet it by 1 this year. So we are trending in the right direction. The goal is 100%. If we don't get 100%, then we don't meet that goal. We have new procedures in place to kind of correct that as well. And then the timely correction of findings is what I had to do. That was the corrective action plans. I turned those in time. We got it back in time. So they not only judge us on those standards, but then they also judge us on if we do the corrective action plan in time. And then disproportionality means over-identifying or over-disciplining or over placing a student outside of the special education or outside of the regular education classroom. We met each one of those by above and beyond. And that all rolls into what will be our next year's special education rating. They're tied directly. That's where you see that we did not meet the timely initial evaluations in red. That was the year we did not meet 2 of them. Both were COVID related. We didn't have the documentation to support it, so that's why we did not meet that goal, but we did score 3.86 out of 4, which the rating level is meets requirements, which is as high as we can score. Some other things that we're doing within the district, we have been working on our multi-tiered systems of support, which is a way of supporting students prior to that special education process, providing interventions, seeing if those interventions help provide growth. We've been using Branching Minds as a program to track that data, and we've begun tracking in the system, pulling data over from our student information. And then, so the student would get identified as needing extra support. The teacher and the team would create a plan, write a goal, and then provide interventions. The Branching Minds helps pre-populate some possible interventions, so it's trying to help the teacher and guide them in a way to go. Then each week, the teacher would get a checklist to track with whom they've intervened, and it's kind of the real 10,000-foot flyover of what it is. But it is, the goal is to meet the student where they are and help provide supports prior to identifying for special education, seeing if we can help them. And then later this week, on Friday, we'll be meeting with the guidance counselors about determining use of a social emotional screener, which is involved in Branching Minds and trying to identify those students early to provide supports as they become identified. It's an 8-question screener, and then if they're flagged in a certain area, it goes into a 40-question screener after that. So some things we've added this year, procedural additions. There's a master list, IEP list that I have to ensure prompt and efficient completion of IEPs and ETRs within 7 days. The goal is to have that into me. If not, I send a reminder email to the intervention specialist just asking, making sure the paperwork does not get lost in the shuffle. I review each IEP as they're turned in and looking for specific areas that are tied with EMIS, where I've worked with Allison Kahn this summer, because our EMIS coding also ties into our funding as well. Throughout the year, we've been doing trainings for an internal monitoring team looking at and checking IEPs and ETRs, and we've recently added electronic signing capability to align with state requirements. Previously, we could put that someone participated by phone within the IEP. The state doesn't want that anymore, but they will accept electronic signing, so I can shoot out an email, we can get it back the same day. At the district level, worked with Rob on providing supports and planning for alternate placement of students. We've looked at ratios and we plan for staffing needs. Renee Neron and I have been working on dyslexia law and what needs we have in professional development. We have multiple meetings coming up over the next several months. With Lisa Gonzalez, we've gone through IDA Part B funding and planning and trying to figure out how and what the correct areas, what I plan to spend aligns to. And then Allison Kahn, again, talking about excess costs and catastrophic costs, which is ways we can recoup some money back to us, and then the proper EMIS coding as well. Brad Stevens in the Treasurer's Office have been great in helping with proper coding of the costs, and we've caught a couple things that we've worked through this year. And then Mike Yost probably doesn't like to see when I call, but we work on a regular basis to try and provide the transportation needs for our students. At the building level, working with building MTSS teams, I give kudos to Mr. Nelson. He's really kind of pushed that forward as far as using Branching Minds. Each one of the teams within the building have been required to and requested to at least attempt it with one student before we roll it out district-wide, because it gives them a chance to practice it, see what the program is, and see if how it makes sense. It's not another thing, it's just a new way of doing something they already do. Mr. Grove and I met today talking about options to best support our students in the career tech programs, and we're looking at just about any possible solution that we can find. We've reached out to other districts. We visited Marion and Tri-Rivers Career Center. Saw some great things that we want to bring back into the district in any way we can to support those students. And quite regular communication with the elementary principals just to ensure students are getting educated in our proper units. We have units in each of the buildings, and sometimes we have to change buildings. Meeting to ensure proper supports for pre-K transition. Jen Eckenweiler and I and Mr. Nate Whitman and the pre-K teachers have all met, just trying to make sure that when they leave pre-K that they're going out into the proper area to get support. One thing I added this year was monthly office hours. I go into the elementary schools, plop myself down in the office. Principals let the teachers and intervention specialists and whoever know that I'm there, and they'll come in with questions or they'll come in with packets of, hey, we have these two kids we want to identify. So let's go through that packet and take a look at the data And I think that's been a positive this year, just to have my face in front of them and they feel that they can come up and talk to me and ask questions. And obviously everyone gets the monthly newsletter, which I found out that everyone scrolls past everything I have and just goes to the staff highlight and read about the person of the month. So future planning, this summer, the goal is to review and revise the Madison Special Education Protocol Handbook. I do it every summer. I should say every summer. This will be year 3 of my doing it. Finalizing internal monitoring processes for next year and timelines where we want to do that. And looking at PD for intervention specialists. And we're looking to find a way to expand sensory areas up into the middle school, just making sure we have the room and I'll be looking at grant money to support buying some supplies for that area. And then next year, looking to continue with the random pull of progress reports each quarter, making sure we're using data and coaching on that if needed. Professional development for aides, including behavior technician training, and then professional development for intervention specialists focusing on progress monitoring and specially designed instructions. Any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along, I need a motion to approve donations.
So moved.
I'll second.
Discussion. I'd like to thank these individuals for their support. Roll call.
Mr. Mosier.
4.
Mrs. Melissa Walker.
4.
Mrs. Cotterman.
4.
Miss Amy Walker.
4.
Mr. Wigton.
4. That brings us to item J, the Community Reinvestment Area Agreement. This is for discussion only, so.
Okay. So as Mr. Bowersock alluded to, in 2020, the City of Mansfield, a company called Airport West LLC, and Madison Local School District entered into a tax abatement agreement. And at that point in time, the Airport West LLC had valued their investment in their property and everything at a $9 million. That's what the value was going to be on they thought the taxes would, valuation would be. Okay. Fast forward 3 years, and what happened was the auditor set the value at $5,060,671 when it's 100% completed. So if you take the school compensation at $9 million, comparing it to the school compensation at a $5 million value, it's a significantly less school compensation amount. So Mr. Bowersock came to me, I don't know, about 2 weeks ago, and asked about changing the agreement, renegotiating the agreement, and I said that's not something I was going to unilaterally make a decision on. I needed to present it to you guys as the board. So to give you a little bit more information, it is a 15-year agreement. The current abatement school compensation is $100,422 a year for 15 years. If we were to use the actual value that the state auditor, or not state auditor, county auditor, has put on the property, it would only be about a $56,467 a year school compensation. So it's a pretty significant difference, almost $44,000 difference in the school compensation amount. Now keep in mind, this is the auditors, what they're saying the value of the building is. It's not really what the fair market value is. Like we talked about that when we've talked about, a levy and what the difference is between the different valuations. This is the value that has been put. I don't think Mr. Dropsy himself actually put it on. He had an appraiser tell him this is what the value of the building is. So that's where we're at. The Airport West LLC is in negotiations with the company, and when you lease out a building, part of the lease deal is the leasee pays the taxes, and I assume this is what's holding up their leasing agreement. But do you have anything you would like to add, Mr. Bowersock?
The only thing I'd like to add is, keep in mind that the property that this sits on was owned by the city and has been owned by the city for the past probably 50 years. It's been an exempt piece of dirt. There's been no real estate taxes paid on it. As part of the deal with these companies, when we do the abatement and so forth, we only abate value of the building itself. We do not abate the value of the land improvements such as parking lots, landscaping, and so forth. So there will be additional tax revenue to the school district on land value that now is on the property. Again, this was an exempt piece. In the same industrial park, we have trucking company. Pretty bad, I can't think of the name of the country, but that company came in, did not ask for abatement. They did ask for a couple of things we were able to provide for them otherwise. Basically, they went in, they knew that's where they wanted their terminal to be. It fit geographically where they needed it amongst their other terminals. But, so the revenue, there will be additional revenue generated off of this site. In today's economic development world, working with site selectors and so forth, pretty much anywhere that they go, they can get tax abatement to some degree, or tax exemption and get proper terminology. In the past, we've had a pretty good relationship with this. It's worked well. We just basically need to find new ways going forward that prevents a big swing like this happening. Like I said, this is a unique situation. There was two others that were done at the same time in another district. I think there were 5 projects approved during about a 6-month period. We hadn't done any about 2 years prior. The others were smaller projects. They did not have big strengths like this. And working with Mansfield City Schools on the other two, and facing the same questions, not as big a project. This is the first building, the spec building that was built in the industrial park area in over 10 years. Not been able to entice developers or contractors to build without having a tenant in hand. And that does hinder us a little bit as we're responding to leads and job for site services. A lot of companies are looking for existing buildings. Our area, Mansfield, the surrounding area in the county, is very short on existing vacant buildings, which is a big swing from the past.
But if we stick to the 140,000 and a tenant does buy this building and move in, they're still saving money because it's a tax abatement, right? So like if we did away with this tax abatement, they would be charged our normal rate of property tax, which would be higher than the 140 even on the 500? Or the 5 million.
So essentially, there's still an abatement to some degree, just not to the same degree. Is
There
that
is
right?
the abatement savings. Okay. Yes, you are correct. Even at $100,000, I've got this written down. Even at $100,000, they are still saving $40,745 per year on taxes at the $5 million valuation. Had it actually been valued at $9 million, they'd have been saving $150,000 a year instead of the 40.
Can the property be increased as far as in the next 15 years? Can the value increase on the property or the building?
The value may increase, but it does not affect the abated portion as far as taxes. It does affect the ground value, as I mentioned, and then it was previously taxed.
Brad,
Yes.
who did the original estimate?
The original estimate was Okay, Mr. Bowersock was given the $9 million by the Airport West LLC,
So they estimated their own property.
so they estimated
It wasn't,
their
and we
own.
didn't have anyone
We
estimate
had nothing to do with it at all. It was written up by the law director for Mansfield City, and the numbers that the law director used were provided to Mr. Bowersock by Airport West themselves. So you are correct. The Madison Local School District had nothing to do with the calculation, the amount, anything other than agreeing to the original $100,422.
And if they had sold it for more than the 9 million, we would still have gotten the 140,000.
That is
or more.
correct. That is correct.
When's the contract end?
You want to ask for your consent on an assignment to the bond.
The contract ends in 2038. It starts in 2023. It's a 15-year agreement.
So what's missing in this negotiation is something to protect if there's a $4 million mistake. Like, hey, if we're off this much, we need to revisit, we will renegotiate. There's nothing in this negotiation, correct?
One thing, it's not a $4 million mistake. The value that they put in their application is based on their estimated investment. And they're basically putting that value based on, again, materials and so forth at the time, and anticipating that's also going to be relative to the fair market value at the end of the project, construction. That, like, up until now, basically, has held fairly close and fairly true. There's no way in 20, when they put the application in, they anticipated that this was going to come in on the auditor's appraisal at $5 million or $5 million.
Okay.
That's where it gets kind of complicated. You know, from the developer's viewpoint, they feel like the agreement should reflect basically the end result as far as the value, and therefore be amended. I understand your viewpoint, or at least where I think it is, and the cities, you know, we're trying to entice these people to invest in Mansfield and take a chance, which they did, in a time when we need to continue to bring jobs in. Here in the Madison district itself, there's been a considerable amount of activity over the years in growth in the industrial sector between the area of about 30 and Mansfield Palm Airport. In that area, there's about 100 companies right now. And out of those, I would say probably 40% have had tax abatement of some form, in some form. Some in the fashion that we're doing it now, which is 100% with this direct payment to schools. Some in either 50% abatement, where the 50% gets paid directly to the auditor. If we'd have done that in this particular agreement, we wouldn't be standing here having this conversation. Your tax revenue off the project would be based on the value the auditor set on it at that reduced value, or the abated value. So I guess that's something that I try to keep in mind. I think going forward, we may get away from the direct payments to the school and just do it through the auditor. At one time, the reason we went to this was the schools could take that school compensation, they directly to them, and use the funds in any way that they saw best for the district. It did not have state funds and they had to spend it a certain. That's changed over the years, but it's still been a good formula, because that level that we're doing at, especially at the 40%, gets you more than 50% of what you would have gotten without the abatement. Where, again, versus in this case, there was nothing you were getting without the project.
Right.
So I guess that's, it's kind of a balancing act. And, to be honest with you, I'm struggling with this one. I'm probably the most experienced person in the area.
I'm struggling too, because here we're going to put an 8 mil levy on, and I'm going to turn down $90,000, you know?
I live in the district. I have for quite some time. And, of course, I've got that hat too, but I believe you're not turning down
Yeah, it's
not ours. I mean, seems like it's fair.
Well, how are we not turning down?
I think it's what is fair.
Yeah, I mean, if your value goes down on your home, you're not going to continue to pay the
My value
same.
on my home that I just bought, it's going to go up at the next appraisal.
We receive it.
So can I ask how many jobs this potential opportunity is anticipated to bring in?
The company that looks, that they're very close to signing will be somewhere in 100 to 150 jobs.
Okay, and is this anticipated to make a huge impact? The decision that's made, is it going to make a huge impact on their willingness to move forward?
Difference in their operating costs of about $50,000, $50,000 to $60,000 just in the cost of the facility. Would it stop the project? I can't. When it comes down to negotiating these long-term leases with these companies,
Airport West Road.
Where at?
Right.
I'm not sure on airport.
Where's this located at, this property?
Carnes Road and Airport West, it's on the west side of the airport, just past the former Richmond County landfill.
Yeah, right around the Air National Guard, Army National Guard. and
You
all.
drive Carnes Road off of Harrington Memorial to Bowman, it looms over, you get to the right. It's hard to understand this maybe for most people, but it's a beautiful building.
No, I know where it's at.
It's extremely well built, and it's something you don't see that type of construction. We have two other buildings built like that here in Mansfield right now. One is the former Saban Robbins building that plastics is in. It's a 160,000 square foot building, same type of construction, 20 years old. It's valued right now, I think it's $3.7 million by the office. I looked that up. The other is the school specialty building. I don't know what their current value is. That's a 250,000 square foot. It'll be about 20 years old as well.
When did this agreement begin?
This year.
2020 when it was signed, but the first tax year was 2023.
December of this year.
We haven't received anything.
Is that?
We have not received any of the tax money or anything yet.
Yeah, but it's been factored in.
May I ask another question? You said that 50 jobs created?
100.
I'm saying that the company they're negotiating was not based
So-
on the agreement.
Oh, I was going to say, because that's significantly different than what's put in here.
Construction jobs, put a number in, do that.
So they only had 5 construction jobs at that?
Well, it's, again, an arbitrary number.
Oh, okay.
We anticipate that what I found from the existing buildings out there, is about every 1,500 square feet, there's at least one job.
Okay.
And that's kind of historical.
If we went into an agreement to renegotiate, can't talk, would it be possible to reduce the length of the tax abatement?
That's something that could be negotiated. We can do anything up to 15 years. We've used 15 years as a standard for quite some time.
Okay.
For simplicity, so that everybody's agreed.
Well, I think we're going to have to think about this and decide what we want to do.
Do they seem prepared or willing to negotiate?
I think they're willing to negotiate. They know it's big in your planning process. I know that I've made them aware that it's a 5-year financial plan.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, this was a part of that plan. Of course, they're aware also now, levy coming up. So I think they're very aware of what the perception is, and they're willing to talk. I think we can come up with something for this one. That'll give you something to work with. One, the other two that I've got city schools, but those again are not as large. There's some other things there. The company's willing to work with you on some other things, but they are not going to make up a big difference with internships and possibility of finding supplies for your, some steel or whatever they can out of there. Out of Dean operation, or Randy Payne owns the Dean Corporation.
Well, personally, I would like to help a company because it's going to benefit our community in the long run. But on the other hand, I don't want to be taken advantage of either. And
They are not trying to take advantage of it, I can guarantee you that. They are trying to do what, quite frankly, what the accountant would ask us to consider. Your CFO has done the numbers, he's pointed out what the difference would be. Again, they're willing to talk. That helps things to them. So, I mean, decision is ready.
Okay. Anything else we need to discuss with that, do you think?
Not unless you have any more questions for me.
Thank you, Tim, for helping us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowersock.
Okay, treasurer's report, and we need a motion to
So moved.
accept.
Second.
Discussion? Okay, approval of the monthly financial report. I'll just kind of be brief on this. I sent it to you. The revenues are down just because of an odd anomaly with Ohio Department of Education. You know, Mr. Peterson referred to the Fair School Funding Plan. The previous biennium budget, even though it was passed and said we're going to do it, they didn't completely give the districts all their money and fully implement what they were supposed to do until January. And when they did that in January 2022 last year, they gave the districts a boatload of money because they tried to catch everybody up from July to January. And because they did that, that overshot the revenues from the state last January. So if we got more than we really should have gotten last January because of what the ODE did, then that makes this January's revenues look much lower. So it's just a matter of timing and what ODE did by overinflating the state revenues last year. So that's the revenue. The expenditures, we're up around 3%, which was forecasted. There is a couple areas that I'm a little bit concerned about that I'm looking into, like purchase services and some supplies. And I've actually went down and looked. It isn't all the purchase services. There's just a few areas, and I've pulled all the companies, the vendors that were higher in this past year than they were last year. And I've talked to, Mr. McVicker and Mr. Christ, and, I've gotten a feel for it. So that's an area that I'm just watching a little bit more closely because it's an area that I'm a little bit more concerned about. But that being said, we are, within about 2% of what we were last year, which, it's not too bad. That's pretty good. That means we're 98% accurate. So, but I'm still watching that. Number 2, it says approval of written plan to eliminate forecast deficits. This is just an exercise ODE requires the district to do because we have a very low fund balance in fiscal year 24 and a negative balance in fiscal year 25. So that's something I had to do to ODE and present to them. Number 3, approval of appropriation modifications throughout the year. Okay, so you guys approve a budget appropriations in the fall. Throughout the year, we get like some local grants, the state grants like Title I and IDEA, they get changed, clear up even into February. So when those changes occur, I have to just give a new plan to the county auditor. So that's all this is just modifications to those plans. It's nothing major. And number 4, the transfer of $23,685.17 from Fund 010, classroom facilities, to 003, permanent improvement. So Fund 10 is actually specifically an OFCC fund. All right, when you guys built the building, there's Fund 10 and Fund 4. Fund 4 is called your locally funded initiative, which are the things that the state will not touch, okay? And you have to completely just put all of your own money into it. And Fund 10 has 2 different areas. They've got what the state funds and what you fund through a bond issue. Well, what you had funded through a bond issue still had $23,600 left in it. And Robin had been taking money out of that for different things, but it really should not be there because it's specifically an OFCC fund. So both the GAP auditors and our regular auditors that were in both said, you got to get that out of there, and you can only move it to 003. So this is just transferring the $23,000 from Fund 10 to Fund 3. It'll still be used the same way. It's still the district's money. It's just closing Fund 10 out because it's an OFCC fund. Do you guys have any questions on 1 through 4 for me? Ready?
Roll call.
Mrs. Melissa Walker.
4.
Mr. Mosier.
4.
Mrs. Cotterman.
4.
Miss Amy Walker.
4.
Mr. Wigton.
4. That takes us to item L. I need a motion to accept that.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Discussion, that includes the addendum. Roll call.
Miss Amy Walker.
Four.
Mrs. Melissa Walker.
Four.
Mr. Mosier.
4.
Mrs. Cotterman.
4.
Mr. Wigton.
4. Sorry, Mary, I didn't give you a chance. Item M, I need, well, I guess we do need to accept this.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion.
Just a couple points on a couple of the items. Number one, the school calendar for next year. There's really only one significant change to that, and that centers around spring break. Typically, we have spring break Good Friday and the week after. Next year, due to the state testing windows, we had to move that, so it will be the week before spring break and the Monday after, instead of
So the week before
Good Friday and the week after.
You mean the week before Good Friday?
Yeah, that week, including Good Friday and the Monday after Easter.
Gotcha.
So, just, that's probably the big change there. Everything else is pretty similar. And then on that, number 5, where it references the Ohio Schools Council advertising and receiving bids to purchase 2 buses, that resolution does not, we would not be required to purchase those buses. It just allows us the opportunity to do that and for them to bid for us. And we would not be purchasing those buses if the levy doesn't pass. We are trying to replace, typically we replace when we buy new buses, about 20-year-old buses. Is that right, Mike? Yeah. And so this is just an example of some of the things that we won't be able to do without that levy passing. And we need to continue to upgrade our fleet. But if the funds aren't there to do it, we can't. So those were the only 2 items I wanted to comment on.
Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Melissa Walker.
4.
Mr. Mosier.
4.
Mrs. Cotterman.
4.
Miss Amy Walker.
4.
Mr. Wigton.
4. Any more visitor comments? We all want to get out of here. Okay, our next regular board meeting will be March 15th, but it will be at the high school library because of tournament games being played here, I believe.
No, the musical practice.
Musical, okay.
Yeah.
I knew there was something.
Yep.
And I need a motion to go into an executive session for employment and compensation.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Amy got it.
Amy got it. It's 6:59.
Roll call when you're ready.
I am Mrs. Melissa Walker.
4.
Miss Amy Walker.
4.
Mr. Mosier.
4.
Mrs. Cotterman.
4.
Mr. Wigton.
4. There will be no business conducted when we come back, so enjoy what's left of your evening.